I feel like Colin is somebody that would be interested in your backstory as well, being the son
Yes.
of Howard Schultz. Like, and I
Yes.
say that because I think Colin and Mike Francesa are the two sports radio hosts who spend the most time talking about business and stocks and the economy and things like that. So I mean, you said yes. Do you remember that Colin was interested in the fact that you're Howard Schultz's son?
Yeah. So that played itself out in a couple of ways. The first time I came on, he brought it up on the show, and
Okay.
if you follow me at all, whether it's on well, any of the socials, or I tend to really stay away from that. Like I don't like to publicize it. I think I've tried to be. It's actually one of the reasons I moved to New York, because I wanted to get as far away from Seattle as possible. In Seattle, like, my last name holds a lot of weight, for better or
Yeah.
worse. In New York, like, nobody cares, and that was really important to me. I also knew at a really young age, as I have explained to Colin, that I didn't want to pursue the family business. I knew it wasn't for me. I knew that I wasn't passionate about it. I knew I wouldn't have success with it, and I remember when I was maybe 16 or so, and I actually told this to Colin. I think this might have surprised him a little bit, at least at the time. But when I was about 16, I sat down with my parents. It was like my junior year of high school. And I sat down and I basically told them, in no uncertain terms, I am not going to be dad's replacement. And I actually think they knew that going into that conversation, but I don't think they anticipated at that age I would
Yeah.
be able to communicate that. And I always felt like that hurt my dad. I've always felt in a part of me that, my dad wanted me to take over for him at some point. He just turned 72. I always felt that, in his mid 60s, when because I'm 38, so when I was in my early 30s, mid 30s, that I would start to maybe creep up. And by the time I was 40, have the opportunity to run the company. That was always in the back of my mind. But I never had the passion for it. I was always sports first, second, and third. That was always really what I loved. And so Colin has asked me, both privately and on TV, but even more so, I'd say, in one-on-one circumstances, Brandon, is he's asked me about that and what that was like growing up and how that impacted me and my views. And I think he's always, what's interesting about Colin is he's really good at drawing comparisons, to your point, from like politics to sports to business to
Yeah.
tech. He finds the middle ground. And I don't know if that would made me more appetizing as a guest, but he always seemed to ask the right questions about not only why didn't I, but the experience of growing up in a small town like Seattle with that last name. And Seattle is so, I think, congruent with Starbucks. Like, everyone just associates that city and that region with coffee. And it's really in many ways, because of my dad and Starbucks. But our paths, my dad and I, are massively different. And I've told this to Colin. Like, my dad grew up in publicly subsidized housing. His parents did not own a home. He lived in Brooklyn. And his only way out was a football scholarship to Northern Michigan. And, my experience as a kid, couldn't have been any different. I was exposed to celebrities, travel, food, good schools. I just had every possible advantage. And I always felt like me not pursuing the Starbucks or business route in some ways was a waste. And I say that because had I maximized all those advantages and been more assertive with it mentally and psychologically, that this is the path I'm going to take, I think it could have led to a really successful path. But then it's almost like the two sides of my brain. The other side tells me there's no way you would have been successful. You always would have been incredibly aware and almost obsessive about the fact that you're following in dad's footsteps. You're in that shadow. And I'll never forget something my dad told me, which I told Colin in private and probably haven't shared really much publicly. Is he told me sometime when I was in college, he said, if you ever did pursue this, I don't think you'd have success. And I was a little bit caught off guard. And I, what do you mean? And he said, because everyone would say you just got this job because of me, and they'd be right. And that really hit me. And I had already made the decision that this was the path I wanted to take, which is really could not have been more different than what my dad did. But it definitely made me feel more comfortable with the decision in a way, in almost a strange way, because I felt badly hearing it at first, but then I felt good about the decision because I knew he was right. And I'll just leave you with this to that point. When I was like in high school and college, a lot of my friends interned for Starbucks. They would do like the month or 2 month internship during the summer, and I purposely never did it. I never wanted to be in that group. And I remember asking my friends, like, how did it go? And they all would say it was great, but I was always treated a little differently because everyone knew why I was there. And I always thought, well, if you were treated a little differently because you were my best friend and you grew up basically in my house, then how would I be treated? And how would
Yeah.
it be for me interacting with other leaders and other CEOs, knowing why I was there? And I don't want to disparage anyone that's followed their parents' footsteps as their passion. Just for me, I knew I wouldn't be good at it.